With the inevitable announcement of MK12 rearing its head around the corner, there is a growing list of questions out there waiting to be answered regarding the next, latest and greatest installment in the Mortal Kombat series. Will there be tag team? When's Shaolin Monks? And who's next to have their soul sucked? Now, as those questions stem from predictions and vice versa, we're really in a scenario where anyone's guess is as good as the others. Being that we love fighting games on this channel, we're really excited to see what Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8 bring us in the near future. I figured now would be a good enough time with the waiting period to get in on the predictions slash hype train that is NetherRealm's latest upcoming installment, and pair it with our second love on this channel in terms of discussing design choices behind gaming as well. Which brings us to the first of many topics in the revival of a series that we brought here to this channel, consisting of only one video to date, known as In the Pipeline. And the idea of In the Pipeline is to blend speculation and reality into one another, using supporting examples where we can uncover them. If we're right, great. If we're wrong, that's fine too. The thought is that we can attempt to align industry trends with genres that we love and prepare us for the best or worst of what's to come. And speaking of best or worst experiences, this takes us to our inaugural topic, the fighting game battle pass. Cause someone's gotta do it. So let's start with where we're at today. Most fighting games still operate by an old seasonal monetization model known as the Season Pass. Your Season Passes of yesteryear were quite similar across the board for most gaming genres, not even something specifically related to the fighting game element too. Usually, a Season Pass would consist of a 3 or 4 month kind of cycle where you would get a bundle of, let's say, assets for the game. When we look at something like a fighting game, this would usually consist of about, let's say, the next 3 to 4 characters sprawled across maybe of that monthly release cadence, a pack of skin, and a few different extra accessories regarding stages or even OST music that you could unlock as well. And for a while, this monetization model was the bread and butter for the gaming industry, even spanning across genres. Your typical shooters like Call of Duty and Gears of War followed this to a T, where over the next course of the year after release, they would get about 4, maybe 3 season passes out there. If you switch over to another genre like the looter shooters, when you consider things like Borderlands, for example, a season pass consisted of 4 different chapters of new environments and maps that you could jump into with your friends to grab all new sets of gear, so on and so forth. Hell, even if we look in the rear view, Capcom wrapped up their 5th season pass, if I'm not mistaken, considering Street Fighter 5, and that game has been out for how long now? So of course, as with any trend in any industry, things are always changing. And that can align all the way up to even a macro level in terms of what businesses today typically care about. More on that note, businesses today don't necessarily like to just focus on what they, I believe, call as flat revenue, but more have an appetite now for recurring based revenue. And to summarize what that means without encroaching on any financial YouTube channel's territory is that businesses today are evaluated more on the revenue that they can predictably guarantee will come in on a month-over-month basis. So if you're following along so far and putting the Lego blocks together, there is a clear disconnect between what businesses today are evaluated upon and what at the time most gaming companies were still monetizing their video games after the fact. Gone were the days of the one-time game costs and season pass combo, and in were the days of the GaaS model. GaaS, more commonly known as SaaS, software as a service, take a guess if you can think what the G actually is and post it in the comments below, was seen as a new approach to monetization for games post-release. With this practice, game developers gained the ability to provide ongoing support over a longer period of time post-release for the games they worked on, reducing rushed content at the sake of having to meet those seasonal deadlines. And this was all held up by the weight of the new kids on the block, microtransactions. Now, microtransactions are very fluid. They can be anything. If we all look over to a game that we are fortunately or unfortunately familiar with, Fortnite, their monetization model proves that there is some truth to this thesis. Everything starting with an actual reskin for your player character all the way down to the in-lobby waiting music are monetized and able to be purchased through one-time transactions or unlocked by way of Battle Pass. The reason why we refer to microtransactions as Atlas holding up the weight of the world that is the gas model is that next to the active player base count, this becomes the source of truth for what the real lifespan of a game is dictated by, which is why I believe we see such a heavy push for gaming studios to align with this gas model. For one, developers can focus on building their game as a platform where gamers can come back even 3 or 4 years after and still discover new mechanics or story elements that weren't initially introduced upon when the game first released. On the other side of the coin, if the studio has a hit, they now have a platform with a predictable revenue stream that they can monetize on an ongoing basis without having to jump to the next game and put their devs under that sort of a crunch window. And for a bit of a further dive on this, take a deep look at Bungie's Destiny 2, as well as Crystal Dynamics' Avengers as the min-max of how it can go super well or how it can go super wrong depending on how that platform is built. So I say all that to say that Mortal Kombat 12 has the chance to be one of the very first of its kind to introduce the gas concept to the fighting game. Over the span of the last few NetherRealm games, we have seen more iterations of the microtransaction introduced across its portfolio. First and foremost to start, Mortal Kombat X, our favorite, our treasure, needs a remaster and it's not even 10 years old yet, had easy fatality tokens, a crit buyout, but also introduced variations of characters. Now, these variations were not a microtransaction, but a gameplay mechanic that just lets you select a variant of a specific character, which I believe started to hint at a sign of life towards that cosmetic approach, as that was one of the bigger delineators that you can see for the character selected that you were going against was, hey, if Scorpion has this skull on his belt, he is rocking a specific variation, versus if he's got 2 swords in his back, he's doing something ninjutsu related. Pivoting over to Injustice 2, the DC Comics based fighter brought customizable gear pieces to your heroes, of which you can unlock more gear through randomized loot drops known as the Mother Box, or bought through different means of source crystals, completely reskin the character like a premium skin, or even transmogging of ugly gear pieces into the one you specifically wanted to maintain stats, and we're not going to talk about that here. And NetherRealm's magnum opus, MK11, really brought out all the stops regarding the many different ways you can spend your real-world money on different microtransactions, whether they were easy fatality tokens, fatalities in the click of a button, skip tower tokens in case some challenge was way too hard, you didn't really want to deal with that crap, so you just use the skip tower token, gear buyouts, if you didn't even want to do the tower, but you wanted to transform your real-world money into crystals, you could use those to buy the more exclusive pieces of gear that only the more, let's say, seasoned of players could unlock. And secondarily, premium skins as well came back, where skins that weren't necessarily inside the game were added as the seasons or as the new content updates progressed that you could purchase. More looking at those Mortal Kombat movie skins that you could get for Raiden, Johnny Cage, and Sonya. Combat League was the ranked mode for MK11, which had players from all over the globe competing for league points with purpose this time, as the ranks that you would climb in this mode would specifically unlock new exclusive sets of gear as well as skins for a randomized set of characters that were selected for the season. So looking back through previous installments of NetherRealm games, it almost seems as if we have an ongoing tech demo trail of what a Fortnite Battle Pass model would essentially look like for a fighting game like Mortal Kombat. Over the course of 10 seasons, NetherRealm was able to give us fresh skins and new gear pieces for characters that were in the base roster or even the post-launch roster as well, all of which weren't necessarily on disc as far as I could research. If anyone has any more information on that, please let us know. So all these components in MK11, considering your character and their skins, the recoloring of their skins, the changing of their masks, the adding of glow effects, are all respective efforts that echo a Battle Pass-like methodology, which can be referred to as reskin everything into the ground and add glow effects. Or you could just collaborate with another IP, which NetherRealm doesn't necessarily commonly do. I mean, there was that one time with RoboCop and Spawn and Alien, then Predator, I think Freddy Krueger, Leatherface, and Michael Myers. I mean, look, if it's not an MK12 announcement, we're getting Terrordrome 2, made by NetherRealm. That's the only way around it. So we've poured and established a bit of the foundation that doesn't make us sound so crazy for mentioning that Mortal Kombat 12 could essentially have a battle pass. But what could it look like? Well, let's stay on that Fortnite model and mirror how its battle pass and microtransactions are set up. The idea here is that we break down and commoditize everything from your player reskins down to customizing the pickaxes, which people may or may not use since no build mode is there. I don't really see them out like that. Emotes, gliders, trails, you name it. The requirement here is having the largest game permutation, where across the many different gear sets and the gear pieces that live within, how many combinations can be individually made across those categories where there are no repeats. In the lens of a fighting game, a character could have 7 pieces of gear across 4 different categories, which would result in about 840 unique combinations, which would be a sizable amount for that one character. Now combine it with the extra 9 or 10 other characters that are also planted on that roster as well. Permutations like this enable your Fortnites and your Valorants of the world to establish that longevity in their game for the microtransactions alone, due to the fact that there are so many gear pieces out there and they're in no rush to put them all up front for you. And we'll likely see some returning offenders from MK11s, but now going into more advanced things like changing weapon effects, having new outro poses when you win a match, in-game taunts between rounds for winning and losing, fatalities even more importantly to get out of the stagnant 2-fatality approach for every game, brutalities, alities of any kind, announcers, you name it. Spanning across the many different games NetherRealm has put out for Mortal Kombat alone, even when they were midway, there is a plethora of OG content they could refer back to while still focusing ahead on what's brand new. As new seasons are introduced every 2 or 3 months, a new character can be brought in as part of that, right? Broken down into different seasons for NetherRealm, thinking of the season of the Lin Kuei or the season of the Shirai Ryu, where we get maybe characters like Frost and also Takeda introduced to the fold if they're not in the base roster. If this is done well, I can see this setting the tone for fighting games receiving meaningful support outside of the 3 seasons and done approach, and provide players of all varieties a reason to come back to the game, as the meta will always be consistently updated via a new character and patches for the original characters that have been in the game for quite some time. So with that, for those of you listening in or viewing from home, what do you think the real betting odds are for a Battle Pass being introduced in MK12? Should I go to Vegas now and bet $1 million on it, or should I likely kind of wait to see maybe some changes get announced here and there? Would love to hear all of your thoughts and feedback in the comments below as we look to pick up this In the Pipeline series. Again, folks, if you want to talk more game theory design in this vacuum that is known as the arcade, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, become a sub boss today, and we'll look forward to having you around on the next video or in the next live stream, depending on what we're playing. As always, sub bosses, I am Boss Ron. I got a crypt to raid. I'll see you guys in the next one.